G'day. If you're anything like me, you care about factors that affect the financial markets, especially relating to crypto. And today, well, I'm going to go through it. I'm going to talk about one of the factors, which is the technology development. And I'm going to go and look into the things that have affected the financial markets, and then also the kind of risks and how you can deal with those sort of risks. I'm going to make sure that when I'm talking about it, I relate it to my broad beans, because they're growing really well. Well, sort of. So, development of technology has influenced the financial markets, similar to how with my broad beans have been evolved and selected breeding over, I'm guessing, like centuries and everything, to make them stronger, more resilient against bad weather, more resilient to diseases, higher yield, tasting better, things like that. Similar to how with the blockchains and everything and technology and that, it's gotten faster, more efficient, better security, and like more smart contract stuff, better decentralization, all that sort of stuff has made it work better and have a more positive effect on the financial markets, which is really cool. But as things have grown, sometimes things can get worse as things develop. So one thing that happens with my broad beans is, as they've gotten bigger, now insects have come along and they're trying to attack it. So we've got aphids. They're like little fly creatures that eat the plant. And so I need to take measures to go against them. So I put like a little oil and stuff on this. Similar to crypto and in blockchain, where as it's developed with the technology, new cyber criminals and stuff are coming in, like hackers, and you need to be aware of that. You need to know that that can affect how this technology works, and by using measures like virus software knowledge, where maybe you don't use it in a certain time or way, so you don't give out, say, your security seed phrase or whatever. And so being aware of that is very important, so there, and that's an influence on the financial markets. Another factor might be that the blockchain wasn't really even created correctly, or the smart contracts and stuff like that, which means that from the start it was flawed. Similar to with my broad beans, if I plant them in the wrong spot, or put them in the wrong soil, or don't really water them correctly when they're growing, then they can grow up all messed up, and then I might not be able to eat them, or they might just not even grow. So it's important to check what you're using, how safe it is, and knowing that if it goes wrong, it really could affect your investments or the financial markets as a whole. So always doing your research about how things should be working. Scalability versus decentralization. Now, in crypto and in blockchain, if people are trying to scale, sometimes that might mean that they need to become more centralized, which can go against what one of the original ideas that they were trying to push with crypto was about. And so you need to be aware that if things are able to scale more, they might have that sort of issue happening. So it's just aware to keep in mind about what's running the whole show. Because if I try and grow more broad beans, even if I'm growing this amount, they're relying on me to come up and water them and take care of them. If it was in the wild though, there'd probably just be one or two and they'd grow in the perfect spot. They'd know when to grow, but they'd also live or die. There's no reason, if they didn't survive, like nobody's going to be annoyed, right? But if I'm trying to scale this, it becomes more centralized, relies on me more. So these guys now have a bit more of a reliance, and that causes a bit more of an issue. It doesn't just work on its own a bit more. Something to think about. So being aware that as things try and scale, there can be more issues with decentralization and the risk in that. Regulations. There's lots of new regulations coming out with crypto because it's an emerging technology. Same with broad beans. Well, not really same with broad beans, but there are regulations that can affect the growing of plants. Like one example could be the amount of water that you use. Sometimes we have water restrictions here in Australia. Going into other people's properties, sometimes that's not always a thing, like, over the fence line and stuff like that. But even growing certain plants, there's some plants in Australia that you can't grow. And so being aware of that in terms of crypto, that can be really important because it might mean that if you've invested in this thing, you might need to sell it all immediately because there's regulations that say if you own that, you're in trouble. Things like that, especially relating to tax. And so it's important to be aware that with this new emerging technology, it can be volatile. And can heavily affect the financial markets if you're going in there. But, keeping up to date with the laws and the regulations and not risking more than you're happy to risk is all pretty simple advice and a good start to getting into this. Market adoption and speculation. So when I first grew these are actually grown as a nitrogen fixer, which means that nitrogen is a chemical or element in the ground and that'll help plant growth. And so it was already ruined a bit by the tomatoes before, and so because they took out the nitrogen, so these broad beans will help put it back in. As I was growing them though, because we've obviously got a whole lot of broad beans growing, I thought may as well test out the taste of broad beans. So we went to the shops and bought a bag, and my girlfriend cooked some up. I ate some and thought they were absolutely horrible tasting. And so I said, why are we growing broad beans? Obviously forgetting that I was trying to grow them for the nitrogen. But that's the thing, is now we've got these abundance of plants that are growing a food that I don't really want. Yes, they do have a purpose other than the food, but in the case of that we're growing these just for food, then I'd be disappointed when it starts to grow the actual broad beans. And so, similar to in crypto and blockchain, is if the chain is trying to say that yes, it'll solve all these problems, you invest in it, and it gets to the point where they're not doing that, well, then the market might crash, people might sell, and it might be heavily affecting the financial markets. So it's important to remember to research what problems they're trying to solve, how much you're willing to risk them specifically solving that problem, and just being aware of what you're passionate about and what you think is worth looking into. You don't always need to do what you think other people think is right, but can be a good guide into what you want to do. And enjoy your broad beans though, either way. I had some from one of my friends' places that's growing broad beans, and I picked one off the vine and it tasted amazing. So sometimes as well, it's just where you get them from, and now I'm actually keen to have these broad beans, now that I've tasted a real natural one, not just one pre-made in the shops. So broad beans, we could imagine them as just like one blockchain And sometimes there'll be other plants close by. So like this lettuce here. Now, sometimes when we're trying to do things with two different blockchains, there can be interoperability risks. So say if we're trying to send something from ETH to Bitcoin or to Algo or to Solana, that might cause things to break. And that can be a risk for your assets, or even just in general the financial markets, because things are going wrong. Similar to my lettuce here, where it's not getting enough sun because of the broad beans, because they're covering all the sun up. They might also be taking some stuff out of the ground, but this was also a bit of an experiment too, to see how big this lettuce could get with sort of very little sunlight. It's doing pretty all right, but it's also not really. Like, compared to these other lettuces, they're doing much better. They've been getting a lot of sun, been getting a lot of food, and so it's just important to know that when you're trying to use multiple like blockchains or things together, that might cause a lot of issues that affect the assets that you own, as well as just general risks too, where cyber attacks might happen and things along those lines. The last factor I'm going to talk about in this whole technology development sort of major factor that's affecting the financial markets is energy consumption. Now, as you might know, plants live off the sun, the water, and the soil. And what can happen is, we get a lot of sun. It's not really going to run out anytime soon. We do get a bit of water, but occasionally droughts might happen. But the soil, that's usually the heart of the plant, in that if the soil's good, the plants are good. If the soil's bad, plants aren't going to go too good. Similar to blockchain, where it can consume a lot of energy. So it can, when it's solving the problems of like the mathematics and of solving the things, I don't fully understand how blockchain all really works, but the way that it uses a lot of computing power to solve these problems. As it gets bigger, it might start using much more energy, to the point where it's near impossible to actually be keeping it running, especially in a way that's sustainable for the environment. Because I need to keep topping up this soil as it gets used up. I put compost on there, or I might put more soil, I put a bit of mulch. But with energy used by a blockchain, it might not be able to just be like, oh yeah, we'll just add another computer, add a new computer to keep powering it. People might build new computing technologies to be able to combat that, but that's something in the future. It's important to recognize that that can be a concern, and it could be causing some issues along the way that might affect the financial markets. And look, so there you go. So there's a lot of different factors that can go into the influencing the financial markets, specifically with the technology development. And there are more factors, like things like how the UI is experienced, like the user experience. It could be just major crises in the world that are influenced by some of this technology. There's lots of things, but I just wanted to scratch the surface a little bit and talk about how you can combat those risks coming out. Because hopefully, at the end of the day, you can grow nice, healthy broad beans and eat them and enjoy them and better your life. But you need to be aware about how you grow them so that you can avoid these things early on, and also growing other stuff too. So you're not putting all your eggs in one basket, so that you can just let those grow at the amount of risk that you're happy to. So I hope that I've helped out, give a bit of insight into all this sort of stuff. I'm not an expert on this. I am an artist creating NFTs, and I'm just happy to make a video. Shout out to Algo Ray Finance for making the competition that I'll be entering this in. That was a major influence in me making this video, because it's a bit of fun. But good luck on your travels, and hopefully we can rise above. See ya.